What happens when a single impulsive decision destroys the very foundation of a seemingly perfect marriage? Meet Emily, a 32-year-old marketing executive who thought she had it all with her husband, Liam, a 35-year-old software engineer. But one fateful night, a shocking betrayal changes everything. This is Emily's emotional journey through love, heartbreak, and self-discovery. Emily's voice trembles as she begins to share the moment her life was irrevocably altered. It only took one night, one reckless, impulsive decision, she says, her eyes clouded with regret. Sitting on the edge of her bed that morning, phone in hand, her world unraveled in seconds. Paul's mocking tone echoed through the phone speaker as he revealed their secret to Liam, her husband of 7 years. He laughed, she recalls, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if the pain he was causing didn't matter. She describes Liam's reaction, stunned silence on the other end of the line. I didn't know how to fix it, and for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure if I even could. Emily's confession immediately grips the listener, drawing them into her whirlwind of regret, heartbreak, and disbelief. The suspense builds as questions emerge. Who is Paul? Why would he do such a thing? And can Liam ever forgive Emily for this betrayal? Emily takes a deep breath as she rewinds the clock to the beginning of her relationship with Liam. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, she says, a small smile flickering across her lips. She recalls Liam as the charming, attentive man who swept her off her feet. He made me laugh, made me feel like I was the only person in the room, she says, her voice soft with nostalgia. Their relationship blossomed quickly, filled with spontaneous road trips, late-night conversations, and plans for a future together. But as she recounts these golden moments, her tone shifts. Looking back, I wonder if it was too perfect, she says. Over time, their love story began to change. Liam, a driven software engineer, started working longer hours, his mind preoccupied with deadlines and projects. Emily, a marketing executive with her own demanding career, found herself craving the connection they once had. I felt like I was losing him, she confesses. The once passionate romance became a series of polite exchanges over dinner, the intimacy replaced by routine. It wasn't that he didn't care, Emily says, defending Liam. But it felt like I wasn't his priority anymore. Her words hint at the cracks in their marriage that would eventually lead to her fateful decision. The audience can't help but wonder, was their marriage always doomed to fall apart? Or could they have saved it before it was too late? Emily's voice softens as she reflects on the months leading up to her decision. It wasn't one big moment, she explains. It was the little things that started to pile up. Liam, once the attentive and affectionate partner she fell in love with, seemed to disappear into his work. His long hours at the office became longer still, and even when he was home, his mind was often elsewhere. I would sit across from him at the dinner table, talking about my day, and he'd nod absent-mindedly while scrolling through his phone, Emily recalls, the memory still fresh in her mind. At first, she told herself it was a phase, that the demands of his job would ease, and things would go back to normal. But as weeks turned into months, the emotional distance between them grew wider. Conversations about starting a family only deepened the strain. I wanted to have kids, Emily admits, her voice tinged with sadness. But every time I brought it up, Liam would find an excuse. It's not the right time, he'd say, or we're too busy. Emily began to feel as though her dreams were being sidelined, just like she was. The loneliness was crushing. She tried to bring it up with Liam, hoping he'd see how much she was struggling. But his responses were always the same. He was tired, he was stressed, and he'd promised to do better, promises that were rarely kept. I felt invisible, she says, her voice breaking. The audience can feel her isolation, the weight of unspoken words and unmet needs. One Friday night, after yet another argument with Liam, Emily made a decision that would change everything. I just wanted to get out of the house, she says. She dressed in her favorite outfit, trying to feel like herself again, and headed to a nightclub alone. The dim lights and thumping bass were a stark contrast to the silence of her home. It was there that she met Paul. He wasn't anything special at first glance, she admits, but he noticed me. Paul, a confident man in his late 30s, approached her at the bar with an easy smile. They struck up a conversation, and before long, Emily found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone in months. He listened, she says simply. Paul asked about her life, her struggles, her dreams, things she hadn't shared with anyone, not even Liam. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, Emily confesses, her voice tinged with guilt. As the night went on, Paul's empathy felt like a balm for her wounded heart. When Paul invited her back to his apartment, Emily hesitated. I knew it was wrong, she admits, but in her vulnerable state, she craved the attention and connection she wasn't getting at home. I told myself it was just one night, she says. The audience feels the tension build as Emily crosses a line she knows she can't uncross, leaving them on edge for what's to come. The memory of that night is something Emily wishes she could erase. It wasn't planned. I didn't go there looking for it, she says, her voice trembling. But as she sat on Paul's couch, the conversation shifted, and so did the atmosphere. He leaned in, and I didn't stop him, she confesses. I should have, but in that moment it felt like all the loneliness, all the rejection, just melted away. Emily describes the encounter as a blur of emotions, a mixture of fleeting comfort and overwhelming guilt. She recalls lying awake afterward, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with regret. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move, she says. Morning came too quickly, and with it, a sinking feeling that what she had done could never be undone. She decided to slip out quietly, hoping she could leave the mistake behind and bury it forever. But Paul had other plans. As I was gathering my things, he picked up my phone from the table, Emily says, her voice shaking with anger and fear. Before I could stop him, he dialed Liam. Paul's voice was filled with mockery as he spoke to Liam. Hey man, just wanted you to know your wife spent the night here, he had said. Emily's pleased to stop when ignored, her panic growing with every word he uttered. I couldn't believe he was doing this, she recalls, her breath catching. That phone call shattered any hope Emily had of pretending nothing had happened. Emily's heart races as she recalls the moment Liam answered the phone. At first, he didn't say anything, just silence, she says. Then, Paul continued, smugly recounting their night together in cruel detail. I wanted to grab the phone, to hang it up, to scream, Emily says, her voice filled with anguish. But she froze, paralyzed by the horror of what was happening. When Paul finally ended the call, he tossed her phone back to her with a smirk. He acted like it was a joke, like it was no big deal, Emily says, anger flashing in her eyes. But for her, the damage was already done. She rushed out of his apartment, tears streaming down her face, knowing she couldn't undo the devastation that phone call had caused. Back home, the silence was deafening. Emily's mind raced as she tried to figure out how to face Liam. She imagined his reaction: anger, heartbreak, disbelief, but nothing could prepare her for the reality. I thought about running, about leaving before he came home, she admits. But deep down, she knew she couldn't avoid the inevitable confrontation. The audience can feel the weight of the situation as Emily's life hangs in the balance. What would Liam say? How would he react? Could their marriage survive this betrayal, or was this the final blow? The suspense is palpable, leaving viewers eager to find out what happens next. A few days later, Emily and Liam hosted a dinner party for his colleagues, a regular event meant to foster camaraderie among his team. Emily had barely been able to look Liam in the eye since the phone call, let alone discuss what had happened. I didn't know how to bring it up, she admits, her voice tinged with dread. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. As the guests arrived, Emily froze in place. There, standing casually in the doorway, was Paul. I felt like I couldn't breathe, she says, her hands trembling as she recalls the moment. Paul, her one-night mistake, wasn't just a stranger. He was one of Liam's employees, a senior member of his team. Paul smiled as if nothing had happened, extending a hand to Liam and engaging in polite conversation. Emily's mind raced. What was he doing here? Did Liam know? Was this some kind of trap, she wondered, her pulse pounding in her ears. Throughout the evening, she avoided Paul's gaze, terrified that he might say something to reveal the truth. But Paul, ever confident, seemed to relish the tension. He spoke animatedly about work projects and shared anecdotes, his behavior so normal it was almost chilling. Every time he laughed, I felt like the walls were closing in, Emily says. The dinner felt like an eternity, each passing second a test of her composure. Emily's dread only deepened as she realized the precariousness of her situation. Paul now held power over her, not just the power to destroy her marriage, but also to wreak havoc on Liam's professional life. The suspense is unbearable, leaving viewers wondering when and how the truth will finally come out. Emily knew she couldn't keep the secret any longer. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep, she says. The guilt was eating me alive. The next morning, she sat Liam down and forced herself to tell him the truth. Her words came out in broken fragments: the nightclub, Paul, the phone call. I was shaking the whole time, she recalls. I couldn't even look at him. Liam's reaction was a mix of shock and fury. You did what he yelled, his voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. Emily flinches as she recounts the moment. I've never seen him that angry, she says. But as his initial rage gave way to hurt, his words cut even deeper. Was I not enough for you? Liam asked, his voice heavy with pain. Emily tried to explain how lonely she had felt, how neglected, but every excuse sounded hollow. I told him I never meant to hurt him, she says, tears streaming down her face. Liam didn't respond. He simply got up and left the room, leaving Emily alone with her regret. The confrontation didn't end there. Liam later confronted Paul at work, a tense exchange that nearly escalated into a fight. You've crossed a line, Liam told him, his voice cold. Paul, smug as ever, shrugged it off, saying, it wasn't my marriage to protect. Emily's betrayal had rippled far beyond their home, entangling Liam's professional life and leaving both of them wondering if their marriage could ever recover. The audience is left in suspense, unsure if this is the beginning of the end or a chance for the couple to confront the deeper issues in their relationship. In the weeks following the confrontation, the fallout from Emily's actions engulfed both her personal and professional life. It was like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, she says, her voice hollow. Liam, devastated by her betrayal, withdrew completely. He spent nights at the office or crashed on the couch, avoiding even the slightest interaction with her. Every time I tried to speak to him, he'd either walk away or say he needed space, Emily recalls. At work, the tension between Liam and Paul was palpable. Emily learned from mutual friends that Liam had confronted Paul in front of their colleagues. He told him to stay out of his life and his marriage, she says. While some colleagues sided with Liam, others dismissed the confrontation as unprofessional, making Liam feel isolated in the workplace he once thrived in. Meanwhile, Emily found herself battling intense guilt and self-loathing. I couldn't escape what I'd done, she says. Everyday tasks became reminders of the life she had shattered. Friends and family noticed the change in her, but she couldn't bring herself to explain. I felt like I didn't deserve anyone's sympathy, she admits. The couple's home, once a sanctuary, became a battleground of silence and unresolved emotions. Liam proposed marriage counseling as a last resort, and Emily reluctantly agreed, though she feared it was too late. I didn't know if he wanted to fix things or if he was just looking for closure, she says. The stakes had never been higher, leaving the audience to wonder if the counseling sessions would bring healing or only confirm the inevitable end. Emily speaks cautiously as she describes the first counseling session. It was awkward, painful, and uncomfortable, she says. The therapist encouraged them to air their grievances openly, and what followed was an avalanche of emotions. Liam admitted that he felt unappreciated and overwhelmed by the pressures of his career. I was trying to give us a better future, he said, his voice breaking. Emily countered with her feelings of abandonment, sharing how deeply his emotional absence had affected her. The sessions were draining but necessary. It was like we were unpacking years of bottled-up emotions, Emily explains. For the first time, they began to see where they had gone wrong, not just in the weeks leading up to the affair, but throughout their marriage. Liam realized he had unintentionally pushed Emily away, while Emily acknowledged the devastating consequences of her impulsive decision. Despite progress in counseling, their future remained uncertain. Some days I felt like we were getting somewhere, Emily says. Other days it felt like we were just tearing each other apart. Liam's trust had been shattered, and Emily knew rebuilding it would take time if it was even possible. As she wraps up her story, Emily reflects on the lessons she's learned. I don't know what the future holds for us, she says, but I know now that love isn't enough on its own. It takes effort, communication, and understanding. She looks directly at the camera, her voice steady but vulnerable. If my story resonated with you or made you think about your own relationships, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.